We're going to start off with Primary Care Support England. As you will know, these are the services, or this is the service that has been delivered on behalf of NHS England by Capita since the 1st of September last year. Early in 2016, then some of the old and ex-PCS offices started to close and wind down, and things began to be centralised. And there's been one or two issues, let's say, since then. But I'm very pleased, actually, that this morning we've been able to bring both Simon England, who is the new Managing Director of PCSE. Simon has been in post, and I forgot to check how many weeks, but I think it's 5. I was going to do 5 or 6 like that. 5 weeks in terms of the new management team that's now leading PCSE. And I'm also delighted to bring back Jill Matthews. Jill, this time last year, was actually on secondment to Capita, I think, from NHS England, and stood up here along with me and told you all what the new world would look like when we went through the transformation and electronic GOS and all of that. So there's a wee bit of stabilisation to go before we get to that. But both Jill and Simon are here this morning. It's going to be a bit of a presentation from them, but the main crux of this is a question and answer session. So we will have plenty of time for you to give your direct feedback to them about the service. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Simon England and Jill Matthews.
Thanks, Katrina, and thanks to all of you for a very warm welcome when I suspect you perhaps feel less than warm towards us at the moment. It's always, for me, a really great privilege to be able to talk to you about whatever topic. I am sorry today that I'm coming to you to talk about a less than great set of circumstances for primary care support. I do remember, as Katrina said, last year I stood up before you with boundless youthful enthusiasm, and don't judge me on the youthful enthusiasm for what I really believed would be a very bright future for primary care support, and a very modern and efficient service for all of you guys. That enthusiasm wasn't just based on my youthfulness, but was based on a very long and rigorous procurement process that NHS England followed to identify Capita as our preferred provider for primary care support. And it was also founded on some very deep and well thought through plans for how the service would be modernised, and we would see an efficient service that removed the need for the tens of thousands of GOS forms winging their way around the country to get your payments to you. NHS England still believes, as do Capita, that long-term vision is the right one. We still believe that Capita are the right people to deliver that service. But it's fair to say, over the last 9 months or so, the service on its journey towards that nirvana has experienced some significant difficulties. And what we want to do today is talk to you about how we're now recovering the service, hear from you about your issues, and provide you with some reassurance about how we're working to resolve them, so that we can move on and ultimately reach that very, what feels like quite distant vision for the future. So both NHS England and Capita recognise that the current service being provided, and the service you've received for a number of months now, is not what you deserve or should expect. It's not the service we have expected for you to receive. We are working really closely together between NHS England and Capita. I've been asked, having run the service in the past and supported Capita previously with some of their stakeholder management, I've been asked to lead a team of experts to work right in the heart of Capita to help them make the changes to recover the service. And before I hand over to Simon to talk about the detail, I just want to thank all of you guys for your patience and understanding. I know it's difficult, I know it's hugely frustrating, but I know you are keen to ensure we do make those improvements. And especially I want to thank colleagues from LOXU, FODO, AOP, and all of our optometry professionals who are standing alongside us, providing expertise into Capita to resolve these issues as quickly as we can. I'm really grateful for both your support and your very practical help. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Simon to talk about the detail of how the service is being recovered.
Jill, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. As you can imagine, it's been an interesting 5 weeks in this job. I feel really privileged to be here standing in front of you this morning. I know that Jill and I are going to get a lot of good input and a lot of good feedback from all of you this morning, and I really appreciate and welcome that. With Jill's help, fortunately, I have met a very small number of you so far, and I'd like to meet many more of you. And I have already been able to visit a number of practices and see what is going on firsthand. And that is so important to me personally, to get a real personal appreciation of that. And let me just say up front, really, to repeat what Jill said. It is very clear that the service has felt way below your expectations and also the expectations of Capita. And it's been said before, but I'd like to repeat it. On behalf of Capita, we apologise for that, and we are on the journey to sorting that out. That is my job. That is what I am here to try to do. It's going to be tough. Some of it will happen quite quickly, and some of it is happening already. Some of it will take quite a long time. And again, I want to set expectations around that. There is still some pretty significant heavy lifting to be done, as I think a lot of you will appreciate. What I'd like to do now, actually most of this session I'd like to spend on Q&A, but I've got just a few slides to give you a few of the high-level details of some of the stuff that we're doing at the moment, just as introduction really to the Q&A. So let me just take it probably by what I'd call the areas of pain. And I'll start with the first two, and this is from my view of what I've heard from you and your colleagues. First of all is around payments. Clearly there have been new processes introduced, new forms introduced. Those processes are not working well. There's a lot of pain around reconciliation of GOS claims. I've seen that. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing behind the scenes, frankly, to standardise those processes, implement those properly, put in place an increased number of staff and training to process that. And we're rolling on new people and new leadership behind the scenes as we speak. A really important thing to me is to get real clear accountability for the ophthalmic payments and performer list processes. And we're rolling on new leadership that's going to be dedicated to owning the processes that support you, which has not happened in the past and is so crucial. Some of those things are going to take a while, and I'm very conscious there are some things that can be fixed and can help alleviate some of the pain in the short term. I've seen it with my own eyes, that the lack of reconciliation information coming out, at a detailed level on GOS batch forms is not helping at all. And one of the things that actually Katrina and myself have been trying to make sure very personally is that, frankly, those changes have been implemented and you're getting the information to help you. And we are checking that that is starting to happen. It only started happening recently, but we are going to be personally following through on some of these things that, whilst they seem small, I know have a massive impact on you and your colleagues in the practices. Performers list is the next area of real pain. And as we know, there are cohorts from July and September this year where we are still behind going through the panels and getting folks onto the performers list. And unlike GPs, as has been said to me many times, unlike GPs, for optometrists, you don't have the grace period. So this is causing you all real pain now, and I understand that. So again, with Katrina's help, Jill and the team have been fast pathing these through. We've got a massive amount of work going on at the moment. We're convening a hell of a lot of the advisor panels to push this through as quickly as possible. And I think we've got a path now through till about mid-December to clear the backlog of people joining the performers list. And again, we're prioritising that, obviously, the remaining folks from July and then moving on to the September group of people. So that is a massive priority for us at the moment, and I'm sure we'll come back to that. But behind the scenes, there's longer-term changes here to put in place the right controls, the right work management, the right number of staff, the right training, the right leadership, to make sure we've got the processes in place for the long term as well, so that this does not happen again. The third area of pain, and again, I have heard this a lot. I have also sat in on calls. I have looked at an awful lot of the emails, variously described as we never get any answers to calls, things disappear into the black hole and we never hear anything. Again, an awful lot of heavy lifting and plumbing work going on here. So we have now managed to put in place, not in all areas for emails yet, but certainly for calls coming in, better call management and CRM systems, and we're now beginning for the first time to get better information coming through to look at trends and to be able to track and manage that process better. Most importantly, we're also adding a lot more staff onto the front end to take calls. We're adding a lot more training because, again, and I've sat in on calls, there have been lots of concerns about the level of understanding and empathy with you, all of our customers. And again, some of those fixes are not going to happen overnight, as you'll appreciate. Recruiting the numbers of people that we're recruiting, they don't suddenly all turn up, thankfully, in one fell swoop. So this is happening over the next several weeks and months to improve the service that you get. On the supplies front, again, this is a little bit before my time. We've obviously put in place the new ordering portal. There were a whole load of initial problems, I know, with stock levels and delivery routes and all the rest of it. The feedback we're now getting, fortunately, is a lot more positive on this. I think it's fair to say there will still be things that we will need to address. One of the most important things we did actually last week was put with our partners in City Sprint, we have increased the number of delivery routes by just over 60%. We've tried to listen to the needs of customers there to improve that routing and the capacity, and hopefully that will also help us deal with any peaks through the year as well. So it'd be useful to get your feedback, but I'm hopeful that that area is an area that has come a long way since it was initially implemented. So just to wrap up before we go on to Q&A, my focus really simply is, again, as I've been reminded many times, you've heard a lot of promises, a lot of plans before. My focus is clearly to deliver on these improvements and make it work. And that is my absolute number one priority. And behind the scenes, what I'm trying to do is drive a mixture of short-term improvements where I can see them, and that's where your input is so important, and the longer-term structural capacity, skills and training, things that are so important to get this right. And finally, the most important thing is staying close to you. My style, I come from a background, I've led big operations and change in the NHS and the public sector in my past life. I have always spent a lot of time on what I describe the front end of the service and the operations. And my commitment to you is I will stay close to you and what is important to you. And I do massively value all of your input, and that is where I will personally start in terms of my prioritisation and making this better. So I think I'll pause there. Do you want us over there, Katrina? Or?
And thank you, Jill. I think what Simon said there about the short-term fixes and the long-term stabilisation, long-term transformation rather, is really, really important. And the 5 weeks that you've had leading the service, I think in the second week or the third week, then Simon and I went to visit some practices in Yorkshire as he said, so that he could see from the front end exactly how the process worked, so he could follow it all the way through in terms of payments and so on, but also to speak directly to folk about the impact this has on the business. And whilst, realistically it is too early to say that we're on the right path with this, it does strike me, or it did strike me at the time, that that's something that the previous leadership at any sort of level didn't do. Didn't ever approach me or Jill or anybody else and say, actually, what if we go out there and see what it's like at the other side? So I think from that perspective, then, that I think it's very valuable and a very positive sign. So we've got quite a bit of time now. That was the main purpose of this session, was to let everybody have a chance to ask any questions, put forward any thoughts that they have to both Simon and Jill. So we're going to manage the questions probably a couple at a time. If I can ask you to raise your hand if you've got a question. The mics will come to you. If you say who you are and where you're from, and then we will deal with them a couple at a time. So the first two, there's one here, Lisa, and there's one at the front here from NHS England.
Hi, my name's Amar. I'm speaking from Avon LOC. I've got 3 questions. The first one is, why did this all happen when you spent a lengthy procurement process and a lengthy detailed process with regards to using Capita? The second one is, you state about cut-off periods for when we have to submit our GOS forms, but would you be able to provide information on statements and when we're going to get them? Because the dates have changed as to when we get them out, or we don't get them at all, which makes it kind of difficult for us to know when the money's coming in or what money's coming in. And third is security. So back last year, you changed the format of the statements coming out to be an encrypted Java file. That we had to use some funky program on Microsoft-based computers to adapt and to decrypt. However, when you ring the contact center after about 6 phone calls, you get a statement back, but that just comes in PDF form, so without that decryption element. It doesn't make sense on one hand that you have to have an encrypted file, but then on the other hand, you're quite happy to send out a PDF. Okay, so there's 3 questions there, so I think we'll take those 3 first and then we'll get to the next one. Jill, I think the first one's probably for you.
The first one's probably for you, yeah.
So I think the why is twofold. I think in a bid to move really quickly to get to the modernised and efficient service, the previous sites, the 40 sites that provided primary care support in the old world, were closed very rapidly, and the services moved into strategic sites in Leeds, Preston and Clacton. I think what wasn't properly recognised was that whilst each of those 40 offices was providing primary care support and did the 5 types of services that primary care support is described as, the nuances, the subtle local variations of how that was done to support the local contractors wasn't fully understood, and as the service moved, those subtle changes, those subtle differences were lost, and that had a massive impact on in individual localities. And secondly, I think it's fair to say in moving into the strategic sites, a significant amount of expertise around the service was lost. And whilst we had assurances about how knowledge would be captured and retained, that process didn't work as effectively as it could have done. So a lot of expertise around the service was lost. And one of the reasons NHS England are providing some additional support into Capita is we are trying where we can to bring that expertise back, either by using people who've worked in the service before or using the good offices of our optical advisors across NHS England to provide that expertise back into the service. So I think for me they are the two main reasons. There's clearly a lot of issues that emerge with a major change. We've clearly seen a lot of change in personnel at Capita, which I suspect suggests that their different styles and approaches have not worked as well as others might, which is why I think we're now on a much more successful footing.
And actually, Jill, I mean, if I can, as you can imagine, I'm asked this question a lot, and it's very difficult for me coming in at this point, really, to give a view. So I think, you know, Jill's insight there is helpful. The question I'm asked a lot is about Capita's commitment to fixing this. And, you know, coming in from outside and having done other things and living with this every day, I can honestly, hand on heart, say it is absolutely unquestionable. I'm getting the support, the resources, the commitment, what I need to do this job. So it will take some time, but the commitment is absolutely undoubted. Yeah, I think that's important to say. On the other two detailed questions, and this is where I might need help from both of you, because forgive me, my induction has been pretty rapid. I've got reasonable level of detail on some aspects, but not all. So the one about the Java files and whatever, I might have to duck and pick up and have a look at, unless Katrina and Jill.
I think it's a question and a comment that's came up before that you know, we had in the old world, and when you say that, you know, things were changed that was at local office level, or when local offices became slightly more regional offices through the periods in the lead up to the changes last September, and certain things were put in place. And I think the focus at the moment has been on, when there is an issue, how quickly can we get it resolved? So that probably is the reason why you don't have the encryption thing. But I think, you know, data governance and information governance is something that's came up across the whole service, both in terms of ophthalmic and GP, particularly services. So and it's certainly an issue that NHS England are you know, very much on the shoulders of Capita around to make sure we've got the right processes. The other one about statements is I think, a question that might come up from other colleagues as well, and is something that is part of the detailed process, as Simon said. Very recently, we've had another walk round. He has independently, and I have had a walk round of the actual hold a bit of a GOS claim form coming in and what happens to it after that. And there are, you know, different bits of the process that actually quite quickly, if things were put into place, like the simple things of getting the statement and the reconciliation information back out to you promptly and accurately, then we're confident, I think, that a lot of the pain in terms of the volume of queries that you've got to put in saying, I don't know what I've been paid for, will be sorted. But it's a work in progress, but I think quite a quick thing.
Yeah, and I think, let me take that one away, because I think there are two aspects there. There's the date by when the process should be working as you would expect and generating the statements and reconciliation information that you need. And off the top of my head, as Katrina says, we've been working through a raft of very detailed improvement plans with NHS England, and off the top of my head I don't know the precise date, but what I can do is take away with you, and the communications and the bulletins that we put out, we can clarify that, and I do want to respond and provide you with more details of those improvement plans. The second aspect to it is probably also the historic reconciliation and being able to work back through where we've got to. And there is a very, and as you'll all appreciate, a substantial and pretty complicated job of going through that historic reconciliation. And that is in the plans. That will take some months. And that is a major area of focus for us at the moment in making sure that we are ready and equipped to be able to do that. But that is clearly on the plans. We will be doing that. I think at the moment that runs through until March, April next year. But again, it's a big job.
Yeah.
We will be doing that.
Okay. Let's move. I think the next question was at the front here. Have you got the mic? Excellent.
Yeah, David Brown, NHS England. Two questions really. First one, what is the timetable now to move to the introduction of the redesigned GOS forms for scanning, and beyond that, the timetable for the electronic GOS solution? That has obviously slipped clearly, but it'd be really helpful to know what the revised timetable is for that. And the second one is that when contractors have had difficulty getting a response from Capita, they have approached the only other people they have a relationship with in NHS England, and that is regional teams. Regional teams have tried valiantly, I think it's fair to say, to help contractors where we possibly can, but we have met the same barriers in terms of getting responses from Capita, and that's been really, really frustrating for regional teams as well. So I guess the question from that is, can there be a route for NHS England to contact Capita that doesn't involve going through the contact centre and generic email addresses, because we never get a response either?
Okay, so why don't I pick up the first one? Yep. Do you want to pick up the second? Yeah. So on the timetable for new claims forms, scannable claims forms, redesigned claims forms, and a new strategic solution, you are absolutely right. Because of what has been going on, there has been immense prioritisation and focus on sorting out the issues with the service. That has had a knock-on impact onto the development of some of those new solutions. I've come in and lifted the lid on that. There are a number of other important strategic platforms around GP payment, screening, and other aspects as well that are in the same camp. And we're now working with NHS England to reconfirm those plans as quickly as possible. I can't give you a date today because there's some really important work that needs to be done. We need to involve NHS England and other key stakeholders in that. Frankly, there are some parts of the plan, actually less so in this area than in some of the GP areas, where I want to go and look carefully at how those changes are introduced. What I don't want to do is have a set of plans that, when implemented, cause another whole round of either unexpected or unintended consequences. And I think, given the scale of some of these new solutions, having implemented change in the NHS myself before, sorry, a different group I know to all of you, but in the NHS before, is you need to be very thoughtful on how you do that. So I just need a little bit of time to work with NHS England to make sure those plans are right, that we've agreed those, and then we can get fully behind it. I don't want to agonise over that, but it is going to take me certainly through this month and next to get to a point where we have nailed those plans. Then I think we will be able to better answer some of those questions. I understand the need to answer those questions, and I want to get there as soon as possible. Jill.
And so in terms of contact, questions, queries and escalations, absolutely clear that has not worked very well up until now. Lots of people have contacted the service through a variety of different means and not ever received a response, even an acknowledgement that their queries arrived, and that clearly is not acceptable for the future. Simon outlined the fact they've now then there are more staff moving into the contact centre, and there is now a facility for phone calls where the detail of the call is captured in a CRM system. So you get a log number, a case number, and all of that detail is tracked. Clearly, for many people, email is by far the more preferable way to make contact, and particularly when questions are complex. There is still work to do to be able to enable the capturing in the CRM system of email information in, but we expect that to be fully functional before the end of the calendar year, so that will help. In the meantime, a dedicated team has been brought into Capita, supported by NHS England's contact centre staff, to understand how best to manage escalations. And that's escalations from the service, but also escalations from our colleagues across NHS England who are rightly trying to beat a path for their contractors. As it stands today, there is a triage system in place for all contact into the contact centre, which will draw out those queries that relate to patient safety. So where a practitioner isn't on the performers list and needs to be, those are triaged out as urgent, as are payment queries where the lack of payment or the errors within the payment are causing significant financial hardship to an individual or to a business, and they are equally being triaged out really quickly. The route of escalation should still be through the contact centre, and I would suggest at the moment, if your query is particularly urgent pertaining to financial difficulty or performers list patient safety issues, then the phone call is the most effective way to do it. NHS England staff in particular have access to the contract management team, what we call the SMT, and that is a route of escalation. It has to be said, it still goes through the same channels as everyone else, so it's not a preferential route, and that has proved difficult to date. But I believe the new escalations team, and I met the lead for that team yesterday, are starting to get a handle on how to do that and get those responses out quickly.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, that's right. It's a massive area of focus because it clearly has not been working. And the example that you just gave, I see every single day coming through my email box as well. You know, two things Jill just mentioned. One of the very first things I did was bring in a new person to lead on what we've called business assurance, but essentially as a person to lead on the whole escalations and complaints piece and make sure that we've got good controls over that. We've got the right processes, the right capacity in place. We're not there yet, but we're moving pretty quickly on that. The second thing is I think we collectively across NHS England and PCSE need to look very carefully at the customer contact channels, the numbers we put out there, how we're smart about that, and re-clarify the information we put out on how to contact us. I don't think it is as clear as it needs to be, and I want to look at that and I want to refresh that as a priority.
Okay, great. So, excuse me, we have more hands for more questions. I can see one here and one over there, so we'll take these two, please, and then one at the back. Mike's just coming down to the front.
Good morning. Rupal Level Patel from NHS England Area Team East. My question is about your performers list. It's nice to hear that you're trying to escalate the applications that come from July to September. If you're holding a national panel, what checks are you going through? Is it the same framework that we would do it if it came to the area team, things of looking at the application, the certificates, and the references as well?
I can pick that one up very, very simply and very straightforwardly. The performers list process doesn't change. The application, the requirements for certification, disclosure and barring, references, etc., is the same, to the same degree of rigour as it always has been. What we've introduced is the use of a national panel to make some of the decisions so that we can run them like a treadmill. We're able to get more applications through a national panel because they sit next door to the team who are creating the packs of all the information. And it's trying to remove some of the burden from individual area teams while we get through the current backlog. But the process is absolutely the same degree of rigour, same membership in the panel. It's just drawn from a number of area teams rather than a single area team.
Okay, there's another question. Yep.
Hi, my name's Chris Newell. I'm chair of Dorset LOC. I might be getting the wrong end of the stick. I'm just a little bit worried about when you mentioned historic reconciliation. I'm sure most of us have probably been underpaid. There's probably a few people out there who have been overpaid. The reconciliation that we've been able to do over the past few months has been negligible, shall we say. When you do this historic reconciliation, are you going to be asking for money back from us?
Yes.
I think it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
So let me be clear, I don't know. I don't know. That is precisely the type of detail that, frankly, we all need to agree on, and we need to agree with NHS England and other stakeholders. Personal view? I would imagine there'll be sensible levels of tolerance that would be applied that would be sensible for everybody. That would be my personal input to the debate. It has not been agreed yet, unless I am aware.
Not
Unaware?
agreed yet.
No. It needs to be. And, we've got that on the plan, but that is, it's crucial that we get that nailed ASAP.
Yeah, so the theory is, and what we're working towards, is that at a contractor level, you will have a summary of what you have been paid for X number of months per month. And that will have been created at PCSE in terms of them looking at the claims that came in and what was paid out, be it through the normal monthly payment cycle, be it through the 5-day faster payment route, or be it through an emergency 1-day payment. Putting all that together and creating a summary for you to say, this is what we think you submitted and this is what we think you were paid. And at a contractor level, you would then have to verify that and say, looking at my records, I agree with you, so you owe me X or I owe you X. Looking at my records, I don't agree with you, and that's where it will get more difficult. So the detail of what happens when there's a disagreement, I think, is the point that... But I think the hard facts of if something's been paid out versus something that's been claimed, and one party owes the other, that's a transactional thing of reconciling. But I think if there is a discrepancy in the information that has been captured at the PCSE end compared to the information that somebody has at a practice level, then that's the discussion around that will then have to take place. Can we take the next question at the back? Thanks.
Bob Wilkes, Central Mersey LOC. Just a couple of questions. First of all, the increased number of staff, is that even more people who won't reply to emails? Or is it more people better trained that it's unacceptable not to respond to emails? The second question as well is about LOCs, because for a while we were getting no money in whatsoever as an LOC. We got to a point where we were probably going to have to suspend activity because we got no money at all. To this date, 6 months or so later, we still haven't had a single scrap of paperwork to tell us what the money is that you've sent us.
Okay, well, let me pick up on the first one. So, your point is exactly right. We are adding a lot of staff. There is no point in adding staff who don't have the training and they don't have the skills. I'm also supplementing my training team, my training leadership team. I'm also now pulling in a whole load of subject matter experts, in some cases my own medical and clinical advisors, which needs building as well. That is going to take some time, but that training and that skilling is absolutely vital. It is going to take a little while to get that in place, but we don't just want to bring on staff and make the problem worse. That is not the intention. We're making changes to that training now. It won't, suddenly solve things magically overnight. You wouldn't believe me if I said it was going to. But boosting the training and what we do is again a huge part of that improvement plan.
On the second point, Bob, I think it's, if I'm honest, until recently it has been the furthest down in the level of priorities in terms of the pressure that we've put on PCSE to get the service sorted. But I'm pleased to be able to say that there's a dedicated person in the PCSE team who's looking at levies for us now, and also an equivalent to NHS England's management team, because quite clearly we get to a certain point where, as you've pointed out, LOCs run into financial difficulty, and if it carries on, then LOCs would end up in financial difficulty. So it's in my best interest and the interest of all of you to make sure that this does get some focus. So we have got a dedicated person at PCSE and also on the other side at NHS England to look at this, and there is, and I know and witnessed myself last week, some work going on to catch up with the levy payments, and the next bit is about the making sure they have all the right contacts to get all the information out about what has been paid to the LOCs. So it is something that actually has started to move just quite literally in about the last 10 days. So more questions. We've got one from the back here.
Thank you. This is Stuart from the East Lancs. Having a newly qualified optometrist unable to work effectively is an absolute disgrace. I mean, the tsunami of applications arrive on time every year. And knowing the difficulties to deal with that and the huge problems of not dealing with it that it creates, why the heck could an organisation as large and as developed as Capita get it so wrong? If I know there's a problem on the horizon, I deal with it before it arrives. I don't wait for that problem to arrive and then not deliver. So further to that, I'd like to know what exactly you're doing to make that better, when we can expect those applications to be completed, and what sort of plans for the future are you going to be able to what guarantees for the future you can say that it'll be done within a specific time, knowing what the problems are, and that I would suggest you allow the applications to come in before the GOC qualified. You get everything else verified, and then this is simply a much simpler process. There's a one step at the end, rather than dealing with it once they're qualified. It's an absolute disgrace because it happens every year, and it's just gone absolutely appallingly.
So there are quite a few parts to that.
Well, it's all about the same subject.
It is, yeah. Which also is why it was very clearly right up there on my priorities as I outlined. And again, what I might do is enlist the support of Jill and Katrina, certainly on the last parts of that. While this has happened, again, I'm not going to duck this, but I wasn't here. My focus is on going forward. There are lots of people who have speculated and given me views. Jill commented on it earlier. And I could spend an awful lot of my time agonising over the past. And not to be glib about this, I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to focus on fixing it, which is actually what you move on to. What I said in my slides, and certainly we can provide more detail on that, clearing the backlog of the July and September cohorts is our absolute number one priority in this area. And as I think we've all outlined, there is a lot of effort that we're all doing at the moment to get that done and get that cleared during November. And I think it will take realistically until the middle of December to have completed that. Those panels are happening every week, and we're continuing to keep that under massive focus. So that is what we are doing about it on the immediate short-term problem. The third part of your question was on how do we avoid this happening again in the future. And that is why we have agreed improvement plans with NHS England in this area to make sure that those processes, the right processes, the consistent processes are put in place because they weren't in the past. We've put consistent processes in place. We have the right level of staffing and training for those staff in place, and those are the subject of those improvement plans, and they run through February, March, April next year to make sure that we are equipped to be able to deal with that properly long term. And certainly what we will look at is how we can share some more of the information and detail around that as sensibly as possible. Those plans, as you'll appreciate, are pretty indigestible, very complicated documents that some of my colleagues have been reviewing, and we just need to be able to get that information probably summarised and out to you in the right form, I think.
I'm not quite sure that actually answers more specifically what I was asking. You're unable to give an actual time frame that you can actually deliver the applications be processed even next year. I find just hard.
Sorry.
Knowing what's coming, can you not make a commitment that they'll be done by a certain time, or do we just sort of have some vague figure and we'll just accept to be hit again?
I think, Stuart, if I just interject there, I think that first of all there are regulations around it. So the requirement is that, the regulation is that optometrists can submit their application 12 weeks in advance of qualifying. So that will remain. I think there's, in terms of the detail of just the administrative processes, then there are lots of things that can be done to improve that, and most of it can be done.
We're told not to submit them 12 weeks before. We're told specifically not to put them in 12 weeks before. I'm sorry.
We weren't allowed to.
They told us not to.
Sorry, who told you that?
Capita told us do not send them in beforehand.
Okay. Well, that's unforgivable, and not, clearly not acceptable. I mean, I think, as Simon says, that one thing is that the focus at the moment is, and we reckon probably 4 or 5 weeks worth of panels to get through first of all, the July and secondly, the September backlog. You're absolutely right about, this can't happen again. I don't want to underplay it. It's been elevated to crisis level. Jill and I have had meetings on last Friday with the team, on Monday with the team. It's not something that anybody's taken lightly. The processes, some of the processes are written in stone, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Some of the processes people at Capita or somebody else have misinterpreted. But there is time, not a lot of time, but there is time for us with NHS England primary care team and the Optometric Advisors Association and all the stakeholders to look at the process from the performer point of view, look at the regulations, look at whether it is actually fit for purpose, and look at from an administrative, because actually, national performer list, it's not really a national performer list. NHS England have talked about it being a national performer list for about the last 5 years or whatever, or more, but there are all these different instances of local processes that then become into this list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause now. We're just about to run to 11 o'clock, which is our 2 minutes of silence. Both Simon and Jill are going to be around. Jill's going to be around till lunchtime. So at the break, if you have any further questions, please do approach them. So thank you very much, and we're just about to enter the 2 minutes of silence.